just wake up time in America, guys. California has taken it one step further. They want state-sanctioned kidnapping. AB495. What is this bill all about? Well, it undermines parental authority. It presents a risk for legal kidnapping, and it has functionally no safeguards whatsoever. Apparently, the radical Democrats under Gavin Newsom's leadership in California simply do not care. They want your children. Gavin Newsom signed AB495 on the last day before the bill expired on his desk. And there's something so dark about that, isn't there? I'm going to unpack what Assembly Bill 495 means for California and the greater impact it will have on the nation. But our warrior brother, Pastor Jack Hibbs, has been warning about this bill for months because of how openly demonic and disturbing that it is. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. When California Democrats push forward a bill that legalizes state-sanctioned kidnapping straight out of public schools, we can believe that their agenda is to own our children so they can bring forth their progressive, perpetual revolution. We'll get into all of this, but give us a rating and review to help us reach more people. I love reading your comments and your reviews. It means so much to us. Go to iTunes, hit 5 stars, and then you can type in a little review. Spotify, hit 5 stars, and it shoves the show up the charts. The more ratings it gets, your little 10 seconds of 5 stars and love the show, you can help us reach more people with the truth about the demonic aspects and darkness of this culture war that are escalating so quickly and what we must do to stand for the next generation. Follow me on Rumble to protect this show, as YouTube has tried to eradicate this show before. Go to Rumble, the Seth Gruber Show. That helps us so much. And we would love for you to be a part of the White Rose Resistance army that we have, supporters all around the country. It takes you. Our goal is to put ourselves out of a job by making the local church great again and establishing righteousness where they live against the forces of darkness, to lay the foundations for renewal and reformation in our day, to plant seeds to grow oak trees, the shade of which we may never sit under, but we're building for a day that we cannot see, so that children will be protected when we're no longer here. That's the job of the church. That's everything we do at the White Rose Resistance, and we need your help. Go to thewhiterose.life, www.thewhiterose.life, and become an ally. We call an ally a $35 a month supporter, or air support. That's a $70 a month supporter, or more if you'd like to. We got one called Spitfire and Team Bonhoeffer. It's very, very cool. And Warrior Poet. Ooh, that one's very cool. Your support means so much. It helps us mobilize the local church with our resistance chapters around the country, create the best pro-life media and education to awaken the church. And we're a Christian ministry. You have to sign a statement of faith to work for me at White Rose. That's how seriously we take this, because we believe unless the church flatulent becomes the church militant, it will become the church irrelevant. Your support means the world. You'll get your battle box in the mail. You can log into the White Rose app, where you can chat with me live or AJ Hurley. You can take courses, curriculum, training, pro-life, pro-choice, practice, debates, and dialogue. There's so much there, and it means so much to us. Thewhiterose.life. You guys ready? Let's get into it. This is the Seth Gruber Show. Do you guys remember when that San Francisco Gay Men's Choir, was it 2020? Because they were doing a choir on Zoom because of the scary, scary COVID cough, said, "We'll convert your children. Happens bit by bit." You remember that? And, you know, the left went into absolute self-protection mode. It was satire. It was sarcasm. We're just making fun of what conservatives think we want to do to your children. We're not actually doing that. Ha 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 ha. Okay, do you remember this whole thing? There's so many of those little snapshots in our culture war in America. Sometimes you get these little moments. It's a little screen grab. It's a little flashpoint that is almost kind of like a warning. It can be a canary in the coal mine. And people usually miss it. They usually don't pay attention to it. But we have tried very hard on this show. I have tried very hard to pay attention to those moments culturally and highlight those when I'm on stage on this show, because conservatives have been vindicated on nearly every, if not every, cultural prophecy, ideological prophecy. They told you what they wanted to do. They overstated their case so that the normies would scoff at it and think it was a joke, but they meant every word of it. I told you this story one time of this young gal who was basically kidnapped by the state of California before she stepped in front of a train and killed herself. Her mother told her story in a documentary I also appeared in by my wonderful friends Robbie and Landon Starbuck, called The War on Children. California has taken it one step further. They want state-sanctioned kidnapping. This is not hyperbole. This is quite literal. My warrior brother, Pastor Jack Hibbs, and many of the warrior pastors in California and their congregants, many of the pro-family organizations, were trying to sound this warning back in August and early September. And apparently the radical Democrats under Gavin Newsom's leadership in California simply do not care. They want your children. What does this mean? Newsom just signed this. I actually I wondered if he was going to veto it, because he obviously has presidential aspirations for 2028. And having this as a part of his record would be so damaging. So I sort of thought he wasn't going to sign it. But it is called AB495, AB495, California State-Sanctioned Kidnapping, Gavin Newsom leaning. What is this bill all about? Well, it undermines parental authority. It presents a risk for legal kidnapping, and it has functionally no safeguards whatsoever. I want to get into some of the specifics right now, because there's been a lot of misinformation about this. But in honor of our warrior brother, Charlie Kirk, I actually wanted to play you this. It's a pretty short clip appearing on one of my earthly heroes, Pastor Jack Hibbs, on Charlie's show recently, warning about this horrific bill, AB 495. Listen to Charlie and Pastor Jack's conversation.
Fighter for California, and that is noble, and that is awesome. Talk about AB 495, a bill that you are warning could legalize child trafficking. I mean, those are fighting words, Pastor Hibbs. Yep. I trust your contention. Educate us. We have a lot of time here, so please, what is this all about?
Charlie, I have it in front of me. AB 495, written by Assembly Member Celeste Rodriguez. It is this. If Gavin Newsom signs it into law next week, you can go to the state website in your home. You can download an affidavit. You can check the box that says, did you attempt to reach out to the parents regarding the possession of the child? Check the box, yes or no. If the person who downloaded this affidavit checks the box, yes, they sign their name, they go down to the local school where this child is, your child, my grandkids. The school board has to relinquish the child's possession into the hands of the requester, any Joe who can download the form without a background check, without having to produce license, passport number, social security number. Those things are suggested, not required. Get a load of this, Charlie. When the individual receives possession of your child, and the school cannot refuse them, the school is also not obligated to tell the parents when the end of the school day comes who took the child, where the child is at. There's no accountability whatsoever, because it is all geared to hide the child from investigation that could possibly lead the child to ICE agents or the like, because it's an assumption that their parents are illegal.
Okay, so a brilliant summary of AB 495. It's allegedly being defended, as Pastor Jack pointed out, by saying, well, it's the Trump administration, you know, they're rounding up all these adults who they call them what's the politically correct phrase, by the way? Now I seriously can't keep up with it. It used to be illegal alien, and then it was undocumented immigrant. And there's a new one. Anyways, all the language that they continue to try to force us to use to sort of soften or blunt the truth about their real agenda. That's the danger with political correctness, by the way. So allegedly, they're saying all these illegals are being rounded up because the first action that they ever did upon entering our country was to break our laws. And but maybe their kids were left here. So this is just the loving response of the radical left to make sure that some other adult that knew the family could come and become the guardian of the minor because one or both parents were shipped back to their original country. That's like apparently how they're defending this. But of course, they have not even tried to show the public that would be the radical Democrats behind this bill in California, that they have no intention of opening up loopholes that would allow traffickers, pimps, pornographers, and unrelated family members or related family members who are not the guardians to trans the kids. They're giving us no hint that, no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to open up loopholes for that. So it's all very concerning. So the primary problems with this bill is that, firstly, it undermines parental authority, strips parents of their fundamental rights to make decisions regarding their children's education, their medical care, including, by the way, mental health treatment. That's like looped under medical care and living arrangements. So a mental health issue like gender dysphoria can now be smuggled under medical care, which a unrelated or related adult that's not the guardian can become the guardian and trans the kids. And obviously California has already shown that they're willing to do this, right? It's not as if we are making radical predictions or assumptions based on no evidence. California has already been in the process the last 2 or 3 years defending minors to be taken by non-guardian adults to start medical, quote unquote, transitions. That would mean, of course, just opposite sex hormones. Okay. Like California has even become a haven or sanctuary state for this kind of insanity. We've already gone over stories on this show that there's been like breaking headlines about this the last few years of someone coming from a state that has banned gender care for minors. Okay, that would be chemically castrating minors. States that have banned that, taking those children, maybe like a lesbian, Joe Biden voting aunt or something, someone who's not a guardian but is in the family, taking those minors to California, including illegal trans aliens to be able to get such radical chemical castration, opposite sex hormones on the California taxpayer dollar. Like, so all of that has already been happening. Okay, so when Newsom signs this bill, or when conservatives raise awareness about how this could be a total gift to perverts and trans groomers, it's not like we're saying that out of the blue. This opens up a legal kidnapping risk. State-sanctioned kidnapping, allowing a wide range of adults, initially proposed as, here's the language in the bill, by the way, non-relative extended family member. Non-relative extended family member? So like a neighbor, your softball or soccer coach, your English teacher, that the bill says has, quote, a mentoring relationship to assume temporary authority over a child with just a signed affidavit. And that's what Pastor Jack was saying. There's no reason why this bill would not allow a coach, a neighbor, to go to the school, sign an affidavit saying they tried to get in contact with the parent. There's no way to verify whether they did or not. Request the child, and the school has to say yes and surrender the minor to any random adult who uses this loophole process. That is the state of California greenlighting kidnapping. It's so insane to talk about these things sometimes. Like, I'm saying these words right now, And I'm thinking, like, there's no way, right? If you're listening to me right now, I want you to put in the comment section on YouTube or Rumble, be like, were you initially thinking like, is this too, I don't know, Seth, there's got to be something that would prevent that. Like, even that seems like that can't be true of today's Democrat Party. Or maybe you're just so much more based. But I talk about this stuff all the time, and I have a hard time sometimes believing the words I hear coming out of my own mouth. Have you ever experienced that? It's like, okay, it's just wake up time in America, guys. This is real. It's happening now. Newsom just signed it on what? Sunday, October 12th? It's so insane. And yet we've had the warning signs, haven't we? We've had the warning signs and people did not pay attention. By the way, this reminds me of the Chinese Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. I don't know if you've studied that. It's quite fascinating. The same thing happened then. This has always been a key tactic of the communists, right? Is to separate children from their parents. But it was certainly a key tactic of the Chinese Communist Party. Radicalize children and turn them against their parents. Mobs of kids at the time were being radicalized by communist teachers. And these kids started going door to door, tearing down houses, pulling people out of their homes, stuffing their mouth with dirt, smashing their heads in with rocks. Like, that was... Some of you who listen to this show every week, you were alive then in the 60s when this was happening. When governments put themselves between parents and children, bad things happen. It's the most fundamental political institution. And it's the most fundamental biblical institution, by the way. I mean, I guess marriage, which begets children, but you know what I'm saying, right? This is all in the creation ordinances in Genesis 1-3. The family, right? The cultural mandate, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, exercise dominion, is given to a family. And the family is taken as such a basic bedrock institution that it wasn't even until, sometime after I graduated high school that the Democrat Party took a mainstream position of deconstructing the family. Now, hear me. You might say, no, Seth, I've watched your film. What are you talking about? The attempt to denigrate and reverse engineer the family has been going on for hundreds of years or decades in America. That's true. But when you look at the Democrat Party, there's always been radical revolutionaries, right? And eventually their ideology does become the mainstream because they're so committed. But the Democrat Party, who is the party responsible for legalizing all of this kind of evil that we've been watching over the last few decades, right? They've given political shape to the denigration and dismantling of the family. But that is relatively new in terms of that being a mainstream position of elected Democrat state legislators and senators, okay, and presidents. Like, I talk about this all the time because it's just such a good example of how things happen gradually then suddenly. Barack Obama, go listen to his Father's Day sermon at some black church, I forget which one, in 2008. It's like he's talking about the family, how important the family is, that children need fathers, that most of our problems in the country, from drug use to depression to high crime rate, is due to fatherless children. And you listen to this and you're like, wow, now that sounds like, Marjorie Taylor Greene or something like that. And you're like, that's Barack Obama, from 2008. Now, his same party is responsible for legalizing gay marriage, which denied children a political right to a mother and father. But his own sermon from 2008, Obama's talking about children's right to a father. The family, that must be protected. So what I'm saying is look how quickly all of this has happened. Where now the would-be white Obama, Gavin Newsom, has just signed a bill that allows state-sanctioned kidnapping. How long is it going to take us to wake up, to realize, yes, actually, it always can get worse? Dr. Nancy Pearcey puts this beautifully. She says that central planners have always wanted to bring the family under greater government control so that they can inculcate their own ideology into young minds and create docile citizens. Slaves. Little revolutionaries. Key observation of nearly every communist regime. The bill also creates an absolute lack of safeguards. The affidavit process did not require parental consent or notification or a background check or a court order, making it an absolutely dream come true for kidnappers, traffickers, and pedophiles. You know what? I never thought I would hear Pastor Jack Hibbs, my dear brother and earthly hero, say this, but a few weeks ago, he said something that he has never said before. He has always told people to stop leaving California for greener pastures and to stay and contend, to stay and fight. Because if all the fighters and the people who know better leave, there is no hope for California. And for the first time ever, regarding this bill, I heard my warrior brother, Pastor Jack, say that if Newsom signs this bill, you should leave this state with your children. Leave. It's time to stop sitting on the sidelines. The Charlie Kirk effect. Come on. Everyone wants to be more courageous now. Recognizing our murdered, courageous brother. I know you feel it in your heart. This is your time. This American revival we're experiencing needs you and your unapologetic voice. So mark your calendar to join our second annual Life or Death Con. Life or Death Con, January 22nd, 2026 in Washington, D.C. It's a one-day charge to awaken, equip, and send out believers across the country who are ready to make a difference in the culture. For too long, the church has watched from the sidelines as bench warmers, if you will, watching other people use their voice and their courage. But your leadership is essential to what's coming next in America and in our culture. We're bringing out the boldest Christian leaders to Life or Death Con, including Steve Deace, Megan Basham, Abby Johnson, Dr. George Grant, AJ Hurley, and more to bring wisdom and clarity to stand in this moment. Then the very next day, join and march with us shoulder to shoulder at the March for Life with the White Rose Resistance Army on January 23rd, 2026. So get your tickets now for Life or Death Con. Go to lifeordeathcon.com, lifeordeathcon.com, and use code SETH, S-E-T-H, for 20% off your ticket. I'll see you in Washington, D.C. on January 22nd, 2026. When the government puts themselves fully in between parents and children, it's one of the last things that happens before bloodshed, before true violent revolution. Either that state, that government, will triple down on their insistence that they are the better parent and kill and criminalize those who prevent them from accessing the kids, or the parents take up arms. The family literally fights back and says, hell no. This has never ended well. There's a writer I like at the Federalist, Stella Morabito. She says, if you abolish sex distinctions in law, you can abolish state recognition of biological family ties, and the state can regulate personal relationships and consolidate power as never before. When even the family is now under the definition and power of the state, they have total control. And the apathetic citizens who lay down and let it happen are to blame. This was one of the key observations of Alexander Solzhenitsyn. Well, his key observation when asked, how did all of this happen, meaning communist Russia, he said, we forgot God. But one of the other observations he makes is that if we had just acted sooner, He has this beautiful part in his the Gulag Archipelago where he's talking about like people were holing up down in their basements, you know, just hiding. And he said, if we had just taken up pitchforks, shovels, anything we could get our hands on and mobilized all in one city, we could have brought an end to all of this. He said, but we didn't. We didn't see what was really in front of us. We didn't act soon enough, and we deserved everything that came after. It's one of the key tragic observations of culture and political warfare in governments that have weaponized themselves against their people, is that the people don't push back or wake up soon enough. And by the time a few of them do, it's too late. This is one of those moments. Now, listen, maybe someone says like, well, Seth, this is, I mean, you're improperly dehumanizing the people behind this bill. I'm sure that they don't want any random pimp or pornographer to be able to get a 9-year-old out of elementary school. Surely there's something in the bill that would prevent that. Surely it's not such a large loophole. Surely there's something that is just about little kids who have been left alone because their 2 illegal parents got shipped back home. Because they're pitching and defending this bill, they being the radical left, the Democrats in California, as a compassion bill that shields illegal children whose parents got arrested by ICE during the school day. So there's like no one to pick up the kid. Bill author Assemblymember Celeste Rodriguez, a radical Democrat, said at a recent press conference, I introduced this bill so children do not have to wonder what will happen to them if their parents are not able to pick them up from school. So if this is all that this means, then obviously Celeste Rodriguez and her various Democrat allies in the California state legislature would have by now amended the bill, right? After this wild conservative outrage pointing out the loopholes that it will allow. I mean, Charlie Kirk, that's one of the biggest shows in the country, blowing the whistle before he got assassinated and martyred. Pastor Jack Hibbs, one of the biggest conservative voices, even though he's a preaching pastor who's almost always with his flock. It's one of the most admirable things about him. His influence is so large that he's also one of the largest conservative sort of voices in terms of news and updates and what we're facing in California and the country. And he's been blowing the whistle on this. All of these pro-family organizations all saying the same thing, that this bill is going to allow anyone to just take a kid. To trans them, to kidnap them, maybe some pervert that is into kids and little pervy little guy that should be killed, and he's just like, well, that's a cute toddler I'd like to kidnap. Yeah, I'll just print out this affidavit. Like, show us that you don't intend to allow that to happen, Celeste Rodriguez, Gavin Newsom. Prove to us that our accusations and concerns are unfounded by tightening up the language so that our predictions don't come true. Prove it to us. Interesting, they have not. Interesting. Remember, by the way, gay marriage, the whole debate in California and then with Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision that allegedly gave a fictional right to gay marriage in all 50 states. It was the same thing with the gay marriage debate. It was originally defended as just a recognition of romantic relationships for tax benefits and societal acceptance. That's all we want. And when conservatives said that redefining marriage would lead to a push for thruples to get married, or that it would destroy children's right to be raised by a mother and father, the same politicians, the same leftist pundits scoffed and mocked us, assuring us that this wasn't about the gays getting children. This is not about threesomes and thruples having marital rights. This is just about people who love each other being able to have the same political, social acceptance and recognition that the heterosexuals get. That's all it's about. Was that all that it was about? No, of course not. Of course, that's not what it was all about. I read this quote on the show just the other day, but I thought it would be worth reading again because I think that because revolutionaries are generally more debased in their mind and in their libido, they usually can't help but eventually and sometimes admitting what their true goals are. It's those who are grounded in virtue and morality who usually have more self-control. It's one thing that I do appreciate about the radical left is that people like AOC sometimes kind of say the quiet part out loud, and they end up saying exactly what they intend to do. And we should listen to them when they do that. LGBT academic and revolutionary activist Paula Edelbrick said, being queer is more than setting up house, sleeping with a person of the same gender, and seeking state approval for doing so. She says it's more than that. She says being queer means pushing the parameters of sex, sexuality, and family, and in the process, transforming the very fabric of society. Hey, here's one more. Pro-gay researcher Stanley Kurtz said, marriage is a critical social institution. Stable families depend on it. Society depends on stable families. Marriage means monogamy. Gay marriage will break that connection. It will do this by itself and leading to polygamy and polyamory. What lies beyond gay marriage is no marriage at all. Pro-gay academic Stanley Kurtz. So just a couple people there who have said from years ago, even decades ago, that gay marriage was never just about tax benefits and societal acceptance of two homos. It was about dismantling the family. Why should we believe that this is any different? Why should we believe that AB495, which allows any rando, non-related, what did they call them? Non-related family member, which, I mean, I don't know how they even prove that they know the kid. Like, there's literally, the loopholes in AB495 are absolutely insane. And the Democrats in California have made it very clear that they have no intention of assuring you that your concerns are baseless and unfounded. They have no desire to prove to you that this bill won't do what Charlie and Pastor Jack say that it can and will do. Will convert your children. Happens bit by bit. Well, this is another one of those bits. And if we're going to wake up, it better be soon. Remember, by the way, in the beginning of 2025, do you remember the Department of Education? We were learning who, by the way, spends billions every year and functions as a left-wing patronage machine. We found out through, I think, DOGE, I think it was through the Department of Government Efficiency, that they were funding Equity Assistance Center, which was hijacked by the radical left and is responsible for advising school districts. Okay. Advisors to educational institutions around the country were caught on camera comparing our educational system to the Holocaust, saying that all white people are racist. And these centers, these equity assistance centers, advise thousands of school districts. And then we got these leaked videos from these educators who are a part of equity assistance centers explaining the importance of sex work in the LGBTQ space and how important it is for children to learn the importance of sex work. Again, this is the Equity Assistance Center that advises thousands of school districts to make sure that they put this kind of curriculum into their health and sex ed and gender theory and English and history classes. And they said it was important for the kids to understand the importance of sex work to LGBTQ plus survival and learn to avoid further stigmatizing youth engaged in survival sex work. So teachers were pushing prostitution as a legitimate lifestyle for minors, and this was being subsidized by taxpayer dollars. And these educators specifically attacked the concept of adultism, which we just talked about on 2 or 3 or 4 episodes ago? What was it, just very recently? With this article from the American Sociological Association's journal Sex and Sexualities that argued for dismantling the idea of childhood sexual innocence and challenging societal taboos against children engaging in sexual activity. They literally want to legalize pederasty. They want to legalize sex with minors. Do you remember that whole episode just 1 or 2 weeks ago? Okay. Back in February when we had all these leaked videos of your taxpayer dollars funding this equity assistance center, advising thousands of school districts, people associated with these centers, saying adultism can be oppressive. The same language from the American Sociological Association's journal, Sex and Sexualities, this paper that just came out at the end of September. Use the same phrase, adultism. Like, what does that mean? Like, when a child comes out as trans to their parents and those parents are not supportive, then it's adultist or it's adultism to not acknowledge their gender identity at 9 years old, because it discriminates against children, treating them as not mature enough to realize and know who they are. And they say that this adultism can actually be violent. These people that were a part of this group, again, your taxpayer dollars subsidizing this, said our young people are knowledgeable and wise. In other words, kids should be able to determine anything and everything, including their sexual identities and any kind of surgeries that they want to support that identity. And if you oppose that, just like a racist doesn't support white people's rights, an adultist doesn't support a minor's sexual rights. That's literally what they meant. In other words, parents should not parent their children. Children are fully capable to make any and all decisions in consultation with educators in the state. But first, we'd like to thank our sponsor of the Seth Gruber Show, Every Life Diaper Company. Every Life. It's such a great company that my wife and I were on the road the other day without kids, and my wife had the lotion from Every Life. She absolutely loves it. So you got lotion, you got your non-toxic baby shampoos, okay, and soaps. You've got your diapers and your wipes. And what's amazing about this company, besides the fact that I know the co-founders and they love Jesus and the unborn, okay, and they're absolutely incredible, is that they're actually pro-America, pro-life, pro-Christian, okay? Most of the baby brands in America support abortion. So they take your money, they profit off of your values. Why? Because Christians have more babies than anyone else in America. That's just factually true. So the Christians having the most babies are then subsidizing and growing the pro-abortion diaper companies, because you got to get your diapers somewhere. And then they turn around and they celebrate abortion. They help fund it. Many of them have paid their pregnant female employees to travel to blue states to kill their kids. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we're not going to create a culture of life when people with pro-life values, pro-family values are actually subsidizing the culture of death. Okay, we have to defund woke corporatism. That is one of the easiest things you can do. If you're having babies, if your kids are having babies and you're a grandparent, if you know who runs the nursery at your church, because every church has to pack diapers, why would that church be supporting a pro-abortion diaper company? Go to everylife.com, use promo code Seth10 for 10% off your first order. That's everylife.com, promo code Seth10. Let them know that I sent you. You get 10% off your order. That helps us at the Seth Gruber Show and the White Rose Resistance, and you are defunding the culture of death. Thank you, Every Life, for sponsoring the Seth Gruber Show. So they've already been pushing this kind of language that children know well enough without parental guidance or direction, and particularly when their sexual identity is not supported by their parents, because everything is about sex for the radical left. It's all about sex. Because if you can free the libido and you can capture the next generation in sexual vice, pornography, queer stuff, trans furries, the most Romans 1 debased kind of things you can think of, and you can pitch it as liberation and freedom so that everyone is obsessed about their sexual identities. There's no taboos. Let's turn over every sexual stone. Let's approve of any and all sexual activities. When you get the next generation, children, experimenting with sexual addictions, identities, obsessions, they're very easy to control. The patristics understood this. Sex is probably the most powerful vice. Now, I'm not like Kinsey. I'm not saying we're sexual beings. But anyone who doesn't acknowledge the powerful driver or aspect that sex is to what it means to be human is an idiot. Like, we actually have to be somewhere in the middle, right? You shouldn't be like Kinsey, who's like, we are no different than a primate. And we're going to, the guy literally like filmed all these weird thruple, quadruples, sodomy, porn, like in his attic, like had all of his friends screwing his wife. It's so disgusting. And he literally saw the sexuality of the gall wasp, who he studied, as indistinguishable from the sexuality of a human being. So there's no taboos. There's no sexual mores. It's all go. Okay. But you also shouldn't be like the crazy fundamentalists who, if they just hear the word sex, they start, getting their panties in a wad. If they just hear the word sex, they're like, okay, that's not helpful either. Denying that sex is an aspect of how God made us, sexual attraction between the sexes, coitus, this thing that's so intimate and comprehensive and powerful that sometimes 9 months later it requires a name. Like not acknowledging that's a part of who we are, like not being comfortable talking about it, that's also not helpful. Okay. So we do actually have to be somewhere in the middle. But the radical left always understood that if you can co-opt, if you can capture sexual identity, sexual activities, sexual attraction, and just put it on steroids, liberate, free the libido, encourage any and all sex play, because there's no God. We're our own gods. If it feels good, it can't be bad. Okay, whatever the stupid liberalist arguments are. They have always understood how powerful of a tool that is to pivoting or destroying culture. We're going to be talking about a lot of this in my next book and film, but it's very important for you to understand that, okay? And one of the final sort of markers of sexual liberation, okay, sexual, quote unquote, freedom, we all understand, of course, the most sexually free are in fact the most enslaved. The more that there's no sexual mores or taboos, where you're quote unquote free to do anything, the more enslaved you become. But my point is this: fully sexually liberated societies, quote unquote, one of their final markers, one of their final steps before they go off the cultural cliff, and by the cultural cliff, I mean like you don't get your civilization back. It's one of the last steps before the chasm. And once you go off that chasm, usually one of two things will happen. Either you get like a Napoleon, okay? Like some radical monarch, sort of emperor figure that rises to restore order, but in the process, a lot of really bad things happen. Or you get taken over by another society, another culture, another civilization. And one of those last steps before the chasm is sex with kids. Actually, it's the sexualization of children. It's the destroying of children's rights and their innocence. It's the normalization or state sanctioning of pederasty and the erasure of the concept of parental rights. Because once the parents are not the guardians, then anyone can be the guardian. Functionally, the state becomes the parent, but when the state becomes the parent, really that just allows any non-related adult to be able to use children however they want. That's like that. That's kind of it. You hit that last stepping stone, you fall, you go down that long chasm, and that's it. Okay? Go listen to our episode not that long ago. Okay? Going through J.D. Unwin's whole book, Sex and Culture. We make a strong historical argument based off of this book that we really don't have that much time left. And that's not just red meat for the base. So AB495 is now the state sanctioning of kidnapping. Oh, but we yelled. We told him that what this would allow. That's crazy. They must have corrected some of the language in the bill. Not to our knowledge. It's all happening fast. It's happening really, really fast. and it's been coming for a while. Between your taxpayer dollars funding sexual perverts and groomers, creating content to advise school districts that opposing the sexual identities of minors is adultist and comparing you in the same group with racists? This sounds insane. You're like, this is not my country. There's no way this is happening. It has been for some time. And by the way, I mean, we should do a hats off to Elon Musk and to the Trump administration for the Department of Government Efficiency. We sure found a lot of disgusting rot, didn't we? AB495. There is nothing that prevents a teacher, a coach, a neighbor, really anyone, using this loophole to kidnap your kid. Kidnap anyone's kid in California. And since we already know that they have supported minors' right to social affirmation and chemical castration without their guardians' or parents' knowledge or approval, why should we believe that this bill won't further allow groomers, trans cult pedophiles to access the children of California families? Do not ever let Gavin Newsom or the voters of America forget AB 495. This should be the primary and fundamental basic political argument against Gavin Newsom, who we all want to know wants to run for president in 2028. And when he does, let this be your case. Anyone with two brain cells left to rub together, even a registered Democrat. Now, that's different than the Democrat Party politicians, right? You know that there's a radical disconnect between your registered Democrat for 20 years and the politicians of the Democrat Party. Even your normal run-of-the-mill registered Democrat would run and run fast from Gavin Newsom or any kind of politician who supports AB 495. We have been warned. You have been warned. Get out of California. And if your kids are still in public school, you should have taken them out years ago. The battle for the future is always the battle for the current next generation of youngsters. They've made that very clear. That's always been their key approach. And it's time for those of us who know better, especially the church, whose whole identity over 2,000 years has been largely built on protection and love for the innocent, the voiceless, the young, the disenfranchised, the marginalized. Okay? Kids, protecting kids, kind of a big deal in Christianity. Kind of a big deal to Jesus, actually. Read through the New Testament. Read through the Old Testament when they abuse kids. It kind of ticks them off. Kind of leads to you losing your society and civilization. Okay, how you treat the least of these. The young. Do not hinder the children. If you cause them to stumble, it's better for you to have a millstone. Okay, like protecting kids, okay? I love this line from Bonhoeffer. He says, the ultimate test for a moral society is the kind of world that it leaves to its children. What kind of society, what kind of culture are we leaving to our children and grandchildren right now? That's why you should support what we're doing at the White Rose Resistance. Go to thewhiterose.life, sign up for emails, or become a supporter, an ally at $35 a month, or air support at $70 a month. Help us fund our next film that's a heritage and beautiful legacy of Christian resistance over 2,000 years and the heroes of the past who fought all of the same battles that we've been talking about on this episode and on this show, whose stories we've forgotten, whose legacy and mantle we can reclaim and stand courageously today in the 21st century in this window of time we have left, this last stand before it's too late. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is The Seth Gruber Show.